alarm goes off and I wake the dead.
They won't hurt you.
Hey.
They've had their time to hurt you.
All right.
Here, I have got a little speech I have to give.
Oh, yes, please do.
Oh.
Have at it.
Wow.
Get him, Sammy.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Litfest in the Dena. Thanks for joining us. Now in its 11th year, Litfest was created by writers, for writers, and for lovers of the written word. This year's theme is Books That Make a Difference, looking at how literature manifests change in our world, our communities, and ourselves. This event is produced by Lightbringer Project, an arts and education nonprofit that also produces the Pasadena Chalk Festival and several unique literary and visual arts programs in LA County Public Schools. One of those programs is Locavore, Lit LA, an online literary journal and teacher resource designed to provide relevant and engaging reading and writing experiences for the public high school students who attend, often with visiting artists and authors, many of whom have participated in Litfest in the Dena. After this event, you can find authors' books for sale in the first floor corridor, author signing tables, and this little lamp food trucks where you can purchase coffees, teas, and small eats. You're here today for the talk story to me, and so yes, I'd like to introduce the facilitator, Josh Evans. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you all for coming out. Shout out to everyone on the live stream. Yes, welcome to the Talk Story to Me panel. We're going to be talking about transformative vocality. I came up with that today. I was very
Wow.
right?
Wow.
Transformative vocality.
I'm supposed to be the one with the improv skills, but yeah, we'll give it to that.
So yes, we'll unpack everything. But yes, my name is Josh Evans. I'm a storyteller, producer. I do audio theater. And it was a dream to bring actors and poets together because to me, that just made sense. So yeah, you guys can introduce yourself, tell them what you do, and all that.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
Hey, everybody. Hi, I'm Bridgette Bianca. I am a poet and professor from South Central Los Angeles. I'm a long way from home. Okay. And I have a book out that you can find outside. It's called Beach Rumble. You'll notice there is a bust that looks like maybe from a cemetery there on the cover. So I think I did the thing. And I am a part of one of Josh's amazing ideas. I am the closing narrator, and I have never done that before. So this has been a really great experience. I cannot wait to hear about all this transformative vocality, so I can see if I'm doing it. Okay, I got to figure it out. Thank you all for coming.
Good afternoon. I'm Atticus Batcan. I come from Long Beach, so I'm also pretty far down that way. I always have a sense of direction problem that way, I think. No, that way. So anyway, I'm an actor. I'm an actor, voice actor. I've done commercial, I've done TV, I've done film, and I'm also a part of Josh Evans' projects. And I have to say this, Josh and I had no need to have met. We met each other 4 years ago online on this dating service. No.
Plot twist.
No, we met with this Facebook group, which was put together by a mutual friend, and we all became a part of this project. It was called the Batman Project, and we played characters against Batman. So it was kind of a really cool deal to kind of to meet people this way. And ever since, we've been talking about a lot. It's a voiceover community where we get to talk about gear, we get to talk about character work, about writing, and the skills that we all brought to the table were very broad, and a lot of people were veterans of the mic and veterans of voiceover. Some people were starting out, a lot of people were very green, some people were students, and then Josh over here, has brought a different voice to the table. He is when you think about voiceover, when you think about voices in the industry, you always think about the guys doing that to prepare yourself for, but Josh is he's got a different voice altogether. He's all exactly. And so when we heard Josh's voice, we're like, oh my gosh, well, there's something that you don't hear all the time. And when we started putting our stuff together, he started writing and started pushing all this stuff towards us and we went, whoa, slow down. Really, all this creativity started coming out of this man, and we went, all right, now we know where his strong skills are coming from his writing. Now we're going to put all like his superpowers together. And so now that's how we bonded. Yeah. And the first time I ever met Josh was to give him acoustic foam padding for his booth area to talk to, so when he does voiceover work, then his voice comes out nice and true, nice and clean. And we met in the driveway of our town room, and we were both wearing masks, and we like didn't see like the lower half of our faces. Yeah. We gave each other hugs. We saw each other for 15 minutes. We left, and then 3 years later, here we are, seeing each other again in the flesh.
That was beautiful. That was gorgeous. Thank you.
Thank you. I gotta
get a better first meeting story. Write something, and then I'll rehearse it.
Okay, I got you. Next year. Okay, so yes, so as Atticus and Bridget have both mentioned, one of the things that I do is like I write a lot, and primarily during the pandemic, everyone was doing different things, and so I turned to audio theater because it's like you want to tell stories, but as we can see with the strike right now, industry is not entirely welcoming, and the animation is very expensive, and so audio theater to me was appealing because I'm like, I can do the whole thing myself. Like I know just enough music to score. It was the pandemic, so everyone was at home anyways, recording from home. You didn't need to go into a studio. And so I'm just like, what's the difference? Like we can make something, we can put it together, we can create products. And it was important to me to also be able to provide opportunities for people of color specifically. Again, every artistic avenue, it's people of color who have the least amount of opportunities. And that's really all I wanted to do. And so, as Atticus said, it was just the 6 of us, I think, 6 or 7 of us in the voiceover group. And at the end of last year, I was like, okay, what if we get really, really crazy with this audio theater stuff and expand it and let people really find out, like, okay, so we have veteran voice actors. What does your voice sound like next to a veteran voice actor? What does it sound like in an official, polished production where the most interesting thing about the character is not the skin tone or anything of the person playing it. It's like you're just a person playing a character, but the story is the interesting part. And so we did like auditions and all that stuff. And we're like 7 episodes in, there's 2 more. And so it's been really fun. And the last thing I wanted to do, I try to look for things the industry ignores. So like one of the things is like, I don't know why they have not adapted Old Testament Bible stories. I'm like, that's your Game of Thrones right there. Old Testament God was a monster. It was some wild stuff. But also I'm just like the most powerful, if you're not thinking acting, the most powerful people who rely on their voice are poets. Yeah. Poets are the ones who need their voice. That's their whole thing. And so I was like, oh, well, again, what's the industry not doing? They're not including poets in voiceover. So I was like, let me reach out. And if you've ever heard Bridget read, you already know she's like thunder in a cup. It's just like, thunder in a cup. So I reached out to her and she was like, I've never done voice acting before. I was like, it's okay, you got it. And I will admit, so I wrote it one way, and then she did the reads, and I was like, oh, I gotta step my game up. Mm-hmm. So I went back to all the outro, because she does the closing narration for each episode, and so I went back and tried to make it a little more poetic, a little more flowy, because she was just bringing so much to it. And then she probably doesn't want me to say this, but I'm currently courting her on like a non-narrative role, just like a lead role in like a romantic epic that I'm planning. And she said she'd think about it, so we're just gonna use this as like peer pressure to get her into it. Wow. So yeah, there we go. But yes, they're highly, highly talented. I'm so lucky to be surrounded by masters of craft. But time is of the essence, so let's dive into it. So, Talk Story to me is the brand, as it were. It streams everywhere. There's a bunch of different just stories that we've done, and I specifically call it audio theater, not audio drama, because I do want the window for people to be able to play. So if it's going to be romantic thing, we can push it over the edge, or if it's going to be funny, or if it's going to be a superhero thing or an anime, like whatever, just But you say audio drama, that kind of takes people a certain direction, and I don't want that. I want you to be like, yo, we're going to the theater, but like in my living room or like in my car, and you don't know what you're gonna get. So now that all that's over, let's get into some discussion pieces. So I've labeled my notes in scriptwriting form. So we're in Act 1.
We're in Act 1.
Welcome.
Act 1 is approach. So actually, we can start with you, Bridget, for this one. So reading, interpreting, and performing. So when you get the script lines, how do you, what was your process in bringing it to life? Because I knew you had to read it, and then there's like, okay, kind of figure out what does it mean to you, where are you in it, where are you in it, and then deciding which performance gets submitted to the producer hat.
That would be you. So first, every single email that I send Josh includes me saying, I have never done this before, just so you know, in case.
Every single one.
Every single episode, every single one. So just so we can just keep that as a reminder, so you can read it with that in mind. But yeah, so every time I get a closing narration, actually it's really fun to get the closing narration because I haven't obviously heard the episode. So I have no idea what's actually happened, but I know where we are in the end at each episode. So I try my best to kind of write it out like a poem. I take what he sent me and I break it down the way that I would break down a poem. And I read it several hundred times. I read it a lot out loud to myself. And just when it feels like it's just coming out of my brain, like it's coming out of my heart, it's coming out of my soul. Because that's the kind of storytelling it is, right? It is a very natural storytelling. Then I practice with like a different, maybe not voice, it's still my voice. I sound this way when I teach, I sound this way when I'm talking, this is how I sound. But I play around and see, okay, so, you know, how would someone hear this if they just went through this epic episode? Like, then they get to me and I'm your landing spot, your soft landing in some cases to lead you off to the rocking song that we have at the end. So I do several takes. The takes aren't always the best. I'm not quite used to, you know, doing the auto narration once again, just to kind of. But I send Josh 2 versions. I record maybe 15, just to be honest. I do a lot of them because I want to play, right? I really want to have fun with it. I want it to feel natural. I want it to feel like a part of the story. I want it to seem familiar in some cases. I know that I love the narrator's voice in almost everything. I'm in love with narrators. I think right now I've been like really paying attention to Jeffrey Wright as a narrator. So I'm like, I love that, right? So I want to try my best, not to be Jeffrey Wright, obviously, but to try to put as much emotion into it as possible and poet it up, right? To give it that extra bit of drama because it is theater. And so you do want to hear inflection and feeling. And even if I'm just the narrator in the end, I'm in the end, right? I want to make sure you leave and you feel like, wow, that was a great story, especially that end part. You know, so in my mind, everyone loves the end. We'll see what happens. But I think they all. I think so.
Oh, we love it.
Yeah, it's
so
fantastic. And it is the perfect setup. So I don't know how to do things small. So with the show, I'm like, well, if we're gonna do it, we're gonna do it all the way. So there's like an opening theme at the beginning. I'm also a huge anime head, so Dragon Ball Z, My Hero Academia. So in anime, for those who don't know, it's Japanese style animation. Most of their shows, when the episode ends, it's like a high pump energy rock thing, and then it's like the credits. And I was like, this is audio. We don't have the benefit of like something like soft and slow as you like are transported away by the glorious visuals. So I'm like, okay, we're ending with Bridget, who's like, pow, 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 with like the narration. I was like, okay, we have to have a song here, takes us out. And yeah, she's the perfect bridge into the outro.
Adding that also to my bio. Just keep giving me the lines, okay?
Wow.
Give me the lines.
All right, Atticus, what's your...
I'm still dazzled with all the improv that's happening in front of me. So I'm soaking it all in. So preparation for somebody who does character work like I do. My wife loves you and hates you at the same time. Because the reason why I say this is because the minute some email comes through from Josh, I look at it and I go, I gotta do something for Josh. And I go upstairs in our bedroom and go into our walk-in closet, which I had made into a voiceover booth before the pandemic. And the reason why I started doing this is because I wanted to start playing around with some characters that I was creating in my head and putting them together on, like just recording myself, got myself some good gear and started recording inside something that would contain the sound a little bit better. I live not too far away from Long Beach Airport, so I have private planes like buzzing around all the time. Where I live on Signal Hill is the only hill that you see in Long Beach, and they like to take a nice 360-degree tour around the hill, and I'm right at the bottom of that hill. And so in between takes, and I record McDonald's commercials from there too. And when I'm doing McDonald's commercials, I have to stop because you hear, I go, hold on a second, guys. They're like, okay, no problem. It's like, is it the plane? It's the plane. So.
And that is the McDonald's. He does McDonald's.
I do. I do. We'll get to that later. But for Josh's projects, for any project that I do that involves character, I beatbox. I taught my son how to beatbox, and this is a great warm up for my lips. So the minute I start beatboxing, my wife already knows where I'm going. So I just started. I started doing this, and then I started warming up. The only time that I drink tea is when I'm just about to go up into the booth, because I don't really drink tea. I drink coffee, but coffee sometimes it's a little harsh on the throat. But when I start drinking tea, it soothes things out. A little bit of honey in there, and I go in, and then I open up the script. And the minute I know that it's a villain, things just start going crazy in my head. Mm-hmm. So and especially if Josh told me, all right, we're gonna bring back the Joker, your Joker character in this thing. And when he says that, I tell him straight off, I'm like, you sure you want that? Because I'm gonna go all out. I have to go all out when this happens. And that includes the maniacal laughing, that includes all the groaning, and it's gonna be covering every side of the spectrum, every nook and cranny of how crazy this guy can be. So one of the characters that Josh would come up with, he wanted that type of character in there. Now, of course, an interpretation of the Joker is not necessarily the Joker written as the Joker, but if you have a character that's similar, you can play a little bit within that same area. And so my preparation is I put up photos on my computer of just crazy looking images of stuff. That way, when I start reading the script, and sometimes the entrances are with a laugh. Right, so if it calls for a maniacal laugh, the interest of a return of a villain. So I start going, and it just starts off. That automatically brings me into the persona, and then you can just kind of go crazy with the read. And so if he has me saying things if he's starting to go into a bit of monologuing, If he's doing a little bit of monologuing, talking about his superpowers and why everybody is just not superior to he is, and he can go all the way up and all the way down, and he can groan, and he can crumple up his voice. He can do a bunch of things that are just, I don't know. Give me a little bit of what he says.
When Hyperforce has him in the air, he's like, do you have any real plan here?
Oh, right, yeah. So he goes from a maniacal. He says something it's like, your armor is coming from godlings, so you really don't have any superpowers, do you? And if you go just crazy with that kind of read, then you can just take it anywhere else. And then he has a part where he has one of the superheroes choking me while I'm talking. So now, I kind of have to show off what that would sound like. Still sound. You can still understand what I'm saying, but you have the idea that the guy's struggling to say something. So if you I don't hold my hand up, but it's almost like you're trying to get a breath out, and it's more of a, you don't understand one thing that you're trying to do, so give yourself the time to just understand what I'm trying to say to you. Do you understand me, you idiots? So it just becomes
masterful.
Because that, you scrunch yourself down to I have a stool in my booth. I move it to the side. I have to move it to the side because I'm always just moving around, bumping into stuff. And you can, anytime that I film myself doing this, you'll see my wife's clothes in the back, because clothes really they help just capture all the sound. And and if you hear the floorboards moving, my wife's going, oh God, he's getting a character. So that becomes part of the thing. But that's just a little bit of my preparation for doing character work, especially if Josh gives me something just over the top. So there you go.
Wasn't that gorgeous? Just that improv right there that he's playing. So we have these two. I love the process. Actually, I'm going to come right back to you, Bridget, because I do want the differentiation with how you do poetry. But I do want to pause here and say, so working with voice actors, obviously you don't have the visual medium, and it pretty much all screenwriting is the same, like television, film, audio, theater. You just kind of have to like tailor it a little bit. And so working with the voice actors and seeing like which prompts brought the most out of them kind of altered how I wrote the script. So like there's certain things that I know, like if it was a movie, you would say like, okay, we're gonna cut to this scene and we're gonna come back here. They don't need to know that. Like that actually doesn't help them. So for me, I'm like, okay, this is where the scene's gonna go. But for them, it's just like your character's coming out of hell laughing and he's ready to kill everyone. Like voice actors need to know the energy of the scene, not necessarily the setting, but just like the energy. Like what's the tone here? Who am I playing against? Because the other part, which a lot of voice actors had to kick it to high gear during the pandemic, is it's just you in your closet. It's just you in a hotel room if you're traveling. Right? That's it. So you're not in a room having the benefit of playing off of other actors and seeing like, oh, you said that like that. Okay, let me like adjust my voice. You don't have that benefit. So you really, on my side on the writing, so okay, let me try and give them enough direction if they feel lost, but also leave it wide open enough if they want to like play. And pretty much, I would say like 99% of the time, it all comes, how everyone performs it, it comes together. And no one's ever been in the same room with anything that we made. And you would never know that by listening, which is just a testament to their skill.
Yeah, it's true, because when he gives us the script, nobody is calling anybody saying like, how did you just read that last line so that I can feed into it? We're just reading his direction. And so as we go along with the script, we're hoping that they're matching, and Josh has just an unbelievable way of directing. So once he gets into the editing part, when it comes together and we all hear it at the very end, we go, whoa, that really worked out great. That really worked out great. Yeah, and you never know. And when you're just giving as many deliveries as you can, I try to give him at least 2 to 3 takes of how I would say a line, so he has options and he can splice and dice however he wants. And so if he likes the more calm read, he takes the calm read. If he wants a little more ramped up, he'll take the ramped up part. But I mean, he's a master at that. So I don't know what he does.
I study. Andrea Romano is one of my favorite voice directors. She's amazing. So I went on a deep binge watching all of her interviews to get into her headspace on how she guided actors, directed actors. And one thing I picked up, which I started adding into emails, is that like I asked for 2 takes, like one that's like right down the barrel of like how the script is written. And then it's like, okay, do it, give me a second take that's kind of like a variation of that. But then the 3rd take, I'm like, that's where you get to go crazy. If there's something that you see in the character that I didn't write, give me that. And when they do that, I'm just like, this is why we do it, because I wouldn't have thought to include that. But yeah, so Bridget, we got you as far as like the closing narration, how you approach like the script that way. When you're doing poetry, because this is about transformative vocality, when you're doing poetry, all right, because that also may be a little more accessible to people, how do you get into like how you're going to perform? Because I know there's a lot of different ways. Some people actually like know, like, okay, this is the 1, this is low energy, this one is 5. Like, how do you get into that? And especially because it's your own words, so no one really knows. There's no other influence over the words other than you. So how do you get into that?
It's so interesting. When I first started reading poetry out loud in 2017, like, to be honest, I was so quiet with my poetry.
Wait, I'm sorry. You started doing this in 2017?
Right, so,
oh my God.
So backtrack really quickly. I've written poetry my entire life. After graduating from Howard, I came back to LA. I went to Otis College of Art and Design for an MFA in writing, and I wrote poetry. But it was a different kind of poetry because the environment didn't necessarily make it feel welcome for me to be my bombastic self, I'll say, in the space. And so for 4 or 5 years, I didn't really write very much because I was teaching and just kind of focused on that. And then in 2017, I was invited to a reading, and I said, okay, I'll write some poems. So I wrote some poems, I showed up, I read my poems, eyes to the table, to the page, didn't look up, finished, sat down, got out of there when it was over. I'm an introvert, you can't tell. So since then, I realized I needed to do something to really make myself feel at home while reading poetry and really own it, because it's mine in the end, right? And not read it in a way that asks for forgiveness, because that sometimes you get caught into that thing too. You feel the aesthetic of the space, and it's like, oh, my poetry is so different. Are they ready for me? Should I change how I do this to match somebody else? And I don't think I do that well, and so I had to be myself. So I started recording myself or listening back to recordings of myself in events. I would script out the poem. I would say, take a pause here. I'd break a word down into spaces, kind of visually to see the spaces there. I naturally talk much faster, so I have to have space that says pause. And of course, a poem naturally has that. You have line breaks, you have stanzas, you have the white space to play with, but when you're reading a poem, it is a performance, and you do need to script a bit, right? Even to the point of like, I move my hands a lot when I talk, and so if I know I have to hold the mic, I need a hand out so I can gesticulate, right, to do the thing, right? So I practice, and I get used to it, and then I also accept that the poem might sound different every time. Because there are so many other things that add to it, right? If there's an audience in front of me that's hooping and hollering and having a good time and stomping and clapping and yelling for me to stop and go back, I gotta be ready for that. And that happens. If I have an audience in front of me that's crying, which happens also pretty frequently, then what do they need for that if I'm moving around? And so I try my best to have space for different reads to match the feeling. And also, because I write about such, I think I would say heavy topics sometimes, I get physically angry, like in the middle of a poem. And so I have to leave room for that. I have to put a reminder, you get angry right here, like slow down, because you're getting ready to like get really pissed off. You're gonna lose your voice in a second, right? Or you get really loud at this part, just take it easy. You got a mic in your hand. And so now I would say in the future now, my book has been out for 3 years. I've been going around with it. I kind of know the script without even seeing the script. I know what to do. And when I realize I know exactly how I want to read the poem, and I'm going to do it like that every time, then I change it. Then I say, okay, the last 45 times I read this poem, I did it this way. Let me try this thing instead, right? Let me add a different line here or switch the lines up or echo myself. So I really try to play with it to make the experience different, not only for the audience that's going to be in front of me, but also for myself. So the poem doesn't feel so routine that it loses meaning. Right? I kind of get that tip, I think, from Nikki Giovanni, who's been reading poetry for obviously my entire life, but for a very long time. And I don't think I've ever heard her read a poem exactly the same way twice. It might have the same cadence because she's still Nikki G, right? It's still 60 years of poetry, but there's something a little bit different because she knows that we're different. And that we really came to see her. We want to see her read that poem and get lost in it. So that's kind of my method. I try to do the same thing with the narration, but I think I might have to get in my closet. So I got tons of clothes. I think that was down here though.
Yes.
And also making me buy more clothing. But I definitely need to think more about that, because I think what you were saying about preparation of the voice is something that I do for poetry, right? I think about what I'm going to eat or drink before I perform. I think about, what I'm going to have to eat or drink while I'm in the space, things like that. I need to take that same level of care into the local booth, aka my closet eventually, because I think it can make a big difference, right? I don't get angry in the middle of the narration segments, but sometimes I do get sad, right? My voice does break, and I'm like, oh no, I don't think Josh is gonna like that. Let me do it again, but maybe that's a part of the acting.
So the shoulder flare, she just did the act. And that's why I want her to be one of the romantic leads. Keep bringing this back up until she says yes. No, that's great. You guys are perfectly segueing. So we'll do for the third act, we'll do tips and vocal stuff. So transitioning to the second act. So we got time. All right, we're doing pretty well because I do want to leave time at the end for you guys to read. I brought some reading materials. So get a little performance for the people. Oh, hey, shout out to Louis Vets. Resto. Amazing. Good luck on your read. Okay, so Act 2, which actually comes up, fits in perfect what you were just talking about, Bridget. So we have all of this. There's like the booth, and there's like trying to find your energy in it, and preparation and all that. And there's a lot of different facets that come into play. So how do you find the play in it? Because we know something that is all technical skill with no play is just bleh. As again, shout out to everyone striking. As Hollywood's about to find out. Like I keep seeing shows like, yeah, we're gonna proceed without the showrunner and the writer. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, do you not know anything happens like up until the final hour? That's fine. They're all gonna get a wake-up call. So how do you find the play? But also, how do you then wed that with the technical? Because there is the other side of the extreme, right, where you're having so much fun and you're playing, you're all in it, but you have no technical skill. And either you're doing the simplest thing like blowing your voice out, it's like, oh no, I can't record for the next 2 days, or just or which Atticus has been coaching me on because I have a lot of big energy. You can overdo a scene because you're having too much fun with it. So like, how do you guys find the play in it, but then also how do you marry that to the technical? You got some big experience.
I think you got the tip for this one. I know the tips.
Sure. Okay. Well, okay. So thank you for saying that. But for certain reads that I look at when I get a script or when I get an audition side for something, and I know that it calls for a character, but what I have to keep in mind is that if it's for a commercial read, I know that they're asking for a type of character to read the copy, but I cannot forget that I'm selling a product, right? So I brought one of the scripts that I was given, and it's a script to sell Tostitos, okay, and it calls for somebody to sound like David Attenborough. And so David Attenborough is doing a documentary on Tostitos. And now it's a 15-second spot, okay? It's a 15-second spot. And remember, the thing that I try to tell myself is that, okay, can you do David Attenborough? Okay, yes, I can do David Attenborough. And if you can do David Attenborough, then just sit in that comfortable spot of David Attenborough and read the copy because you're selling chips, you're selling snacks, right? So that's the thing that you want people to focus on. David Attenborough is just the guy in the back reading the thing, right? Even though they go like, why is he selling Tostitos? But so anyway, when I approach it, I always tell myself, Tostitos, just remember, it's Tostitos. You're selling Tostitos. You have to say, David Attenborough has to sell everybody Tostitos. So the copy goes something like this. So it says, spring is in the air and it smells like cheese. Tostitos Mexican style 3 cheese, all right? So then I say, how would David read this? So what I need to do to prep for that is I have to open up videos because I have them in my head. But he's getting older. Do they want a younger David Attenborough? Do they want an older David Attenborough? So which one do they want? And so now I start watching several videos of his and I go, okay, I think I'm going to read it this way. So I found a video where he's all the way down on the side like this, and it's about twilight. He's next to a really large turtle. And he's talking about, of course, the turtle is we're wondering why the hatchlings are coming out of the sea so comfortably. Maybe it has something to do with the attraction to the warm weather within it. And so now I take that and bring it to, spring is in the air and it smells like cheese. Tostitos Mexican style 3 cheese. So then you're able to meld it together. So now remembering that you're selling Tostitos. You have to keep telling yourself that, so you keep going. The cheesy goodness woke up their hibernating taste buds. Tostitos. Now this is the tagline that you have to sell. Tostitos. Get to the good stuff. Then there you're done.
Yes.
So that's how you do it. That's my prep. I'm sure their voiceover artists do different things. They handle different things. They go with different methods, but that's my method of trying to embody a character to sell a product. And the most important thing always is to sell the product. So, I hope that's why I answered that.
Anybody have any chips out there?
Right.
Okay, so for me it's a little different. Two things. Josh asked me 2 reads, and so the one read he says, read it, like you're reading to some middle schoolers who are really interested in the story, but they need to really hear that narration, feel that kind of morose feeling of the hero's down or whatever. So I do my best to do that, and because I am kind of an excitable person, when I start reading the first time I read, it's a really big read. It's like I am packing in every bit of poet I could ever I go really big. I go as big as possible, arms up big, because I have a mic that sits on the desk, so I'm literally articulating up here.
Yes.
And so by the time I get to that last read, which is always the last take.
Really?
That is always the last take. I curl my body in more just to physically not move, and to feel how you do need to be like a little bit maybe closed in. So I read a little bit closed in. I might lean a bit and try to read it as if I am the exhausted hero at the end of the thing, right? Like I am kind of tired, because I am tired, literally. I've been reading for a long time. I am tired, and my family's probably also annoyed as well, but they know what's happening. They get that I'm not obviously in space, but I curl in a bit more, and I kind of read and kind of do like I call it the Snape hands. I don't know if anybody watches Harry Potter movies,
yes.
But he's very like dismissive of everything. Yeah, Alan Rickman, right? So kind of do like, oh, well, and then our hero does like that kind of thing. Sometimes I am hoarse because I teach all day and I do poetry things, and I'm like, well, let's just lean into it. I'm a little bit hoarse, and so that's just how the narrator's gonna sound right now. I don't have much other choice in this regard. I've been teaching for 8 hours. This is what it's gonna be. But yeah, in the beginning, really big body movement, because I'm used to being in front of people, like pulling them into the conversation, pulling them into the poem. And then at the end, I close it in a little bit more, because now I think I'm reading a story to you. And so I need to get close to you as I read this story to you. So I'm like cuddling my little mic, so that I can really make sure also that I sound clear and not echoey, because in the beginning, it's very echoey, because I am very big with the sound and it's bouncing off the walls. I'm going in the closet for real. Not that way, but this way, yes.
Do it.
So I need to kind of dampen that sound, but I try my best to, I don't know, it feels weird, because again, I haven't heard the episode, so I don't know the tone of the episode. I don't know if we're excited already, we're happy about this. I'm learning the story through the narration, and so the first couple of times, I might be really excited about it. I'm like, oh wait, that's the villain. No, we're not excited about the villain. Okay, let's rethink that and go back. And so all it takes have me saying, oh no, not that. And sometimes me sending messages to Josh and saying, send me a voice note about how to say this name, and so I can say it correctly and not sound like a complete fraud, though I might be. I try my best not to be. So yeah, I try to give the big read in the beginning, and I just work my way down. So about midway, I stop. That's the take that you get. That's the poet take. And then at the very end, the very, very, very last take, I say last take about 5 times. But the last one is really the last one. And then I do that one. And that is the take I give, because that's when I know I've given all the energy I can possibly give to this thing. And I've said all the words correctly. I've said it 1,000 times. I own it. And it owns me a little bit too. And so it sounds good. And I said, hey, cut it. And then I chop it up in my little Adobe Audition and send it over to Josh.
That's right. Wow, that's awesome. So this is why I dreamed, right?
Yes.
Of bringing like voice actors and poets together, because like the process is so similar. And I've not sent anything back. I've not asked her for a single retake. I just want that to be on the record. She sends the 2, and I always use one of them because it's perfect.
And I always say I can do it again.
She does. Lots and lots of disclaimers.
I even said, like, she did that in 1 take. I know she did that in 1 take. It has to be.
It feels like, well, that's the thing, poetry is 1 take. So like I can practice all day and for months and weeks and then go to a reading and they only get the 1 take. I don't get to start over.
Right.
So I give it like, that's the last take. That was the best one. Let's go. That's the show. So I can't come back next week and say, hey, you heard that poem 2 weeks ago? I'm doing it different this time. Like, no, it's the last take every time. Yeah. So I'm kind of used to that. So I think that's probably why I stopped.
See, I have to use that myself, because when I'm going just a little bit, but
That's good.
it's because I do, since I act as well, I do a lot of self-taping at home. We don't go to the studio much at all anymore to do auditions. So they ask for a self-taping, and so I have my setup, I have my green screen, I have my lighting, I have all this, so that when it comes time for taping, it's usually at 1 in the morning when all the kids are asleep. Because if I try to tape during the day, we gotta, I'm like, I gotta take that again. I gotta take that again. So it has to be strategic, but I try to tell myself, okay, I'm only allowing myself 5 takes here, because I can fall into a rabbit hole of saying, like, I didn't say that word quite the way I wanted to say it. Like, I didn't gesture to the right, I gestured to the left, the person's over there. I can fall into that all night long. By the time I look at my watch, it's like 2:30. I go, okay, I can't do that. I have to give myself 5 takes and move on to the next thing that I have to do. And I have to still slate. There are times where I have done like an entire 45 minutes doing 1 scene, and I had not done the second scene yet. I still have to go back and like reframe myself to say, hi, Atticus Batcan, Los Angeles. And they still have to do that and put it all together, and there's still some editing that needs to happen, and they need it by 9 a.m. tomorrow,
Always.
Yeah, so anyway, there you go.
A professional.
Yeah, it's got to be professionally done. It's got to feel all nice and clean.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys both hit on something that's very interesting, is how much energy it takes. Like
Yes.
it takes a lot of energy. And what I've had to tell some of the people who auditioned for the show that we're doing currently, who have never voice acted before, we're like, I think I kind of maybe want to like let me play. I tell them, excuse me, every take has to sound like it's the first time you did it. Like you can't get to the take and be like, I'm so tired. Like and the energy every single time has to be like you haven't done it before. Although I do like the way you said that, like every take, the last take, like that's poetic. Do you do poetry? Okay, so we're doing well. So in Act 3, nuts and bolts, best practices and stuff. So before I give you guys the prompt, one of the reasons I like audio theater is because it's accessible. I think I said this at the beginning. It's super accessible. And like I did an audio theater workshop at Octavia Butler Magnet last year for their literary festival. And just to give the kids, again, the same opportunity. So come in, it's quick rundown because, they're middle schoolers, so the attention span is that long. So quick rundown, quick tips. Here's where we're at in the story. Who wants which role? Do it. And I'd already set up like the soundscapes. And so at the end, I put it all together. And they had a QR code. And so I just uploaded their performance to the QR code. So now every kid got to hear what they sound like in a snippet of like a space opera. There's like lasers in the background, blah, 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 blah.
Innovation.
I love that.
Innovation.
Thank you.
In the classroom.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so, but for me, I'm just like, I want them to know, like, that you can do it. Like, you don't have to wait for like the deal or whatever, or to finish school to like start and make something. Like the quality may go up as you're kids, you don't have no money, but the quality may go up as your equipment gets better. But like you can make stuff now, and that is like across the spectrum. Like if there's really no age limit on voice acting. Like if you just want to do it, you quite literally can. There's so much free software now too. Like people are asking, what do you use? I'm like, whatever came on my laptop, that's what I'm using. Like you don't have to buy anything in order to do it. Okay, so nuts and bolts. You guys kind of got into it a little bit. We'll do a few minutes because I want you guys to read, and then in case anyone else wants to get the Q&A. But like best practices, warm-ups, and if you guys have any particular mentors or inspirations that you kind of like turn to.
Okay, so for poetry, I'm inspired by my poetry community. I don't know how many folks are involved or get out to the LA lit scene often, but I'm inspired by them mostly. So I listen to them, and not to imitate or anything like that, but I listen to how uniquely they sound like themselves and how I can look forward to that sound. And I try my best to be distinct in the same ways. So I might listen to some poetry online or listen to an audiobook or go to YouTube. YouTube has some fabulous poets who don't have books out. They don't have all the fancy things. They might have a cell phone in front of them, recording them. I love that because it seems so honest. Mm-hmm. And so I try my best to remind myself of that. Like this is a part of my job, yes, but it's also my job to be myself. So I keep reminding myself that every time. The moment I start to slip into a cadence that feels unnatural to me or just feels like, oh, I'm trying to sound like somebody else, I stop, right? Because the imitation is flattering for them, but not flattering for me, right? I don't look good in that color, so I have to go back and be myself in the end. But yeah, I do listen to a lot of folks. I love the poets from the Harlem Renaissance. So there's all these Spotify lists of like Langston Hughes, Countee Cullen, reading their own poetry, and it sounds stilted to the modern ear because of what voices sounded like back then, but it sounds so clear and crisp and lasting, and I want that to be how I sound in 50 years, 20 years, 75 years. And then I also look at modern poets. Like there's a poet local to the LA lit scene named Atticus Batcan, and they are so amazing. They read completely opposite of how I read. I read very loud, very big, very booming, and they read just so quietly. They have a poem they say, when a boy tells you he loves you, just so soft, just landing you into like a bosom of the poem. I'm like, okay, I don't do that, but damn it, that was good. And so I want to also feel like I'm giving my reader or my listener, my audience member, the same feel. So I think for the voice acting, I'm trying to imitate that same feeling of they're listening. And I want to lay this down for them. I want to bring them into this. So that's what I do. I do a lot of videos, reading, watching, and then just playing, like you said, like just what's going to happen? What's the worst that can happen? I can yell this thing and then it sounds terrible and I do it again. Okay, last take, one more time, right?
Yeah.
Why not?
Well, okay, so for voice acting, you know, I have to trace back to my childhood. And so a lot of that had to do with like playing with toys, right? So playing with toys, like you start out with like, for boys, you know, for some boys, it's usually, you know, you're doing a lot of like car noises, this and that. My cousin's actually in the audience right now, and we both grew up in the Philippines, right? So I grew up and didn't move here until 1985. And he was my favorite cousin. So we would play all the time. We had also like Japanese animation. We had like the giant robot thing. And that was a big deal for us back then, right? So, and then we also had action figures and we would play. And, you know, I would think about all those times that I played with my cousins. And, you know, like, you know, we'd play like Star Wars action figures and Masters of the Universe. So you got like He-Man like being heroic and, you know, the main villain Skeletor. You know, it's like, Skeletor, you're not going to get away with it. And, oh, He-Man, you'll take on my main henchman. Get it, my man. He-Man, you'll never try. You know, like it just, you get all this stuff in your head and then you start following people when you get older. Now that you have access to the internet, you look them up. You look up the people that you used to listen to when you were a kid. And you start finding out like, okay, so now that I'm getting into this industry, and now that I found myself getting into this industry accidentally, but always had this passion of actually acting, we get here and you start doing your research and you start finding out like who did what voice back then and how did they just keep going? How did they find the passion? I'm like, and it doesn't feel like work is the thing. You know, when I'm in the booth, I'm having so much fun in there. I forget what time it is, and oh gosh, I gotta feed the kids. You know, and I go, okay, so just gotta keep doing this. And I listen to like the voices, like the guy who does Scooby-Doo, the guy who did, or the lady who did. Like I did a vocal workout, a voiceover workout with a lady named Vanessa Marshall, who did Wonder Woman in the animated series of Justice League, which followed the Batman animated series, which was made absolutely famous by Kevin Conroy, you know, but they did an animated series of Superman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Green Lantern, Batman, all in one animated show, and my mind went like, who am I gonna listen to, right? So Vanessa Marshall did the voice for Wonder Woman in that, and I was able to do an online workshop with her and 12 other people, including a mutual friend of ours.
Shout out Dena.
Yes, yeah, Damon Adams. And then we get a chance to hear somebody who we listened to and actually jumped in the fandom of. We became fans of these voices, and you get inspiration from that because you see them in the flesh. They're people. They're just people, and you hear their stories and their experiences and their journeys into getting into the industry and how they love it so much. And you share your love for it, and you make that connection. She's now a friend of mine on Instagram, and we've been talking. And no.
We'll bring her out next.
We're both married, but no, just kidding. But yeah, it becomes that connection. You go like, oh my gosh, I am now talking to somebody who I used to look up to.
Yeah.
You know, and absolutely, your mind is blowing at the same time, and you gain this momentum. You get yourself back in the booth and you're like, okay, here we go. You're loving what you're doing. It never feels like work to you. What's the next step? Where do you go from here? You play with your friends. You know, we're all very talented people and we're all people of color. And how much of that do we need in the industry? We need a lot of that in the industry. We need so much of that in the industry. We're all very capable of doing what everybody else does. And if you don't get that kind of diversity, you know, then our message gets lost, you know, and we all want to be that person who I look back on the kids that I knew back in the 80s, or my family who see what I do, and I brought our name up, you know, they've seen it in credits, they've seen it in things, and I go like, guys, I'm bringing our family up. And I hope you guys are proud of me. You know, you get energy from that. There's all this positive energy that you can just bring yourself up with. And knowing that you get to share that again, you get to share that with people, and they can say like, hey, how do I get to where he went to? Now you're that person. So you're just feeding off all that positive energy in the booth. You light it up, you fire up the laptop, you go, let's go, open that script. Okay, read this thing. Tostitos. There you go. That's it.
Beautiful. I love it. Okay, so I see Sam in the background. So in interest of time, before I have them read anything, I wanted to open up to you guys. If anyone had like a specific question or wanted to even come up and receive coaching. Yes.
Where do we find this thing that you've been producing?
The credits portion. Wherever you get podcasts, just type in "Talk Story to Me," and it pops up. So Spotify, Apple, Google, everywhere. Yeah.
We're there. We are there.
And it's a long list. This particular project is called Triumphant. So you'll see when you go to the Talk Story to Me, it's Triumphant and whatever the episode names are. But yeah. Any other questions?
Oh, that was the other thing, by the way. Like when Josh put one of the first project up on Spotify, I'm like, I'm on Spotify? What are you talking about? Like, it's on Spotify.
Right. And I think that's part of the accessibility thing. Anybody can be on Spotify. It's actually not super difficult, but a lot of people, industry, would have you believe that it's this elaborate process, and it's really not. So I want to spread that around to people, and again, particularly people of color. It's like, yo, you can do this too. Like, there's a political podcast I follow by this dude named Prop, and it's called Hood Politics. He's like politics is just gangbanging in nice suits. Like that's all that is. And his thing is like, they're not smarter than you. So his whole podcast is, let me take this thing and put it in like street terms, just regular neighborhood things that you get on your level. Be like, they're not smarter than you. And that's kind of my thing with this. Is like, they're not smarter than you, they're not better storytellers than you. They've had the technological. Is that Deacon?
Yes, Deacon. Deacon.
Shout out when your friends come through.
Sit down.
He's actually also in our
podcast, yeah.
But yeah, they're not. They've had technological advantage, but in the era of content making, Hollywood is they're just content makers with bigger budgets. That's really all that it is. Yeah. They are no different than anybody else. I saw another hand. Yes.
First of all, I was a big fan of books on tape, on CD and all that. And because I love crime stories, I was always into Richard Ferrone. Because Richard Ferrone always sounded like those noir guys from the past. There was something very captivating about his book. And I would stop and hear that. And I was like, how, now that the industry is a lot of streaming and all of that, what are the entry points now? Or is it better just to do it yourself?
That's a good question.
That's a really good question.
Classically trained actor and writer and all that stuff. But I'm interested in getting into this idea of audio storytelling. I would love to do it as a performer writer. But what are the entry points now? Because the industry has changed so much.
Yeah. There's a lot of.
I know that's a
yeah.
It's a big question, but it's actually, it's not that, it's really, it's easy. I want to say it's easier than you think, but because Definitely. It's so much more accessible to put yourself out there. I mean, I've heard it before, like if you want to do podcasting, you got a microphone, you have a phone, you start recording yourself and just like put it out there. You ever tried that? You know, TikTok is another thing. I know that it's kind of like a trend right now. A lot of the kids use it to like, just film like, Cheerios being poured out of a bowl and like see how many like hit on the ground, things like that. But there are other people who are actually creating. There are people who create and they put it out there and it's instantly seen by people. You all of a sudden you never know. You could be an overnight sensation. You can get somebody looking at let me just look on the phone and see what TikTok's all about. Like, oh, who's this? Then all of a sudden it becomes like wildfire. Somebody sees your name, they say like, I want to follow this guy right here because he seems like he knows what I like, and it becomes a big fan base and everybody starts wanting to see what you're doing. That's one avenue, one of many avenues that you can take.
Yeah, I think the other thing that I would add to that, as far as like things you could do today, is join a community. There's so many groups on Facebook, and then once you get into one of those groups, then because you're not the only one. So then everyone's asked questions. Well, what mic do I use? What do I start with? Blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And you are able to take advantage of what they're doing. And then, as what happens does, if someone's working on a project, then you can be like, yo, like, can I get in on that? There's also a website called Casting Call Club. And yeah, a lot of creators use that because it's either low budget or no budget. But if you're trying to get in, get your reps up, that's an entry point. And then, or come to things like this and then just hit me up afterwards and I'd be like, yeah, keep in mind for the next thing we're working on. So there's a lot of things to do.
And again, it was an invitation.
Yeah, one of the people in our group, Andrew Lander, who's just like crushing in voiceover right now. He booked his first gig with a USB mic that he was using plugged into his computer in his car while it was raining.
In his car.
Yeah.
In his car.
Yeah. So this idea.
So
that
he shared the video with us, and I went, "You're in your car. You recorded that in your
Right.
car."
Sent it in and got work. So there's really there are preferences. There are no rules. That's all that it is.
Yeah.
There's preferences, but there's no rules. Any other questions? Yes.
I was listening to you, I'm just thinking, I know many of you for inspiration have looked back, but to me, it's just amazing that you've created, I'm wondering if any of you did any research or were inspired by early radio shows. We're talking before television.
Yeah.
And the great talent that was in that, but here, now you have, as you were sort of saying, you have the technology, you can do your radio show without a network, I'm wondering, and going along with that, do you do your own sound effects and things like that when you're putting something together?
Are we at 5? Okay, 5 minutes. I do not. That is the benefit of the technology. One of the voice actors I follow on social media, James Arnold Taylor, he talked about that early when he was doing ads for I think it actually was chips, but reading it on the phone, he had to pound his fist on the table to make it sound like the character was walking, and that's a lot of work. So I have the benefit of existing in YouTube, and you just go to YouTube. Pretty much any sound effect you want is there.
It's there.
So you can find screams, you can find monster growls, and then there's also a lot of polished sounds. You need the laser fire or jumping into hyperspace. All that's there. I think the only thing, sometimes I'll take it and tweak it in the program that I use. The only thing I really don't take from YouTube is the score. To me, that's a very personal work. And so there's a lot of free, royalty-free stuff on YouTube. But to me, that's personal. So I went, okay, what does this scene sound like? Okay, we got the keys here. Maybe that should be a trumpet. Maybe put a little bass for it. So that's the only thing I don't outsource. But again, there are people who do. And I happen to have enough of a musical background to pull that off. But someone else may not. And so I feel like, you get in where you fit in, you use the skills you have. But special effects, I just go to YouTube.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, last question.
Don't be really
No, yeah, you're good.
2 quick questions. Did you get it just Steven's job?
I did not.
Oh, you didn't.
Sorry.
You're such a visionary. So how do you see this project evolving? Because I can't imagine you don't have already some sort of map in your head of where this is going. Or can you share that?
I can. All right, I'll do this in 2 minutes, Sammy. I got you. Okay. So for me, Octavia Butler is a huge inspiration for me, and George Lucas. I've always been attracted to pioneers and people who are watershed moments for creative culture. There was everything, and then they happened, and then it was all different after that. And that's all I've ever wanted to do. And so, but I also know that Octavia's just getting her shine now. that it doesn't always happen in the moment. And so obviously we would like there to be a swelling, and then sponsorships come in, and then you can pay people. We can do bigger and bigger things. But for me, the short-term focus is amassing a library of stuff. And so even if this particular project doesn't blow up, every single person involved has something they can add to their portfolio. It's hey, I actually have done voice acting, and it was a part of this thing. So that's like the short term, and then long term is, you know, using the working life dollars to then, okay, we got a little extra this month, like let's try and get this animated or you know, when you're in rooms, because also that's one thing I believe in is being ready. So if you know, Kevin Hart's like, I need a children's show. Well, actually, I already have a children's show. It's called Primarosaurus Tales. It's a musical. It's about dinosaurs that teach kids how to be good people, which actually exists, and there's songs, there's music. So yeah, I think that's like the short term. Like keep going, build the library. You know, do these partnerships, and let people know that's accessible. And then yeah, long term, it's I want to be Disney if they were the good guys. That's what I want. I don't need to be making $65 million a year while the park employees are barely scraping by. I can take 20 million off of that and everyone can eat. And I think that's the other part, coming to it with the mindset of abundance. Everybody can eat.
Yes.
Everybody can eat. There's not a scarcity of resource. There's a scarcity of humility and generosity, but there's not a scarcity of resource. Everybody can eat. And so, but when you do that, your steps are slower. You can't like gun to the top. So that, I hope that kind of sort of answered what you were talking about. Sammy, where are we at?
So it is 1:30, so technically the event is over, but we can keep going as long as people know that.
Okay, what time does the next panel come in?
We have 30, or the next one is at 2 o'clock.
Yes,
Okay, beautiful, thank you. All right, so officially, thank all of you for coming out. This was great, shout out to the live stream. I'm gonna linger just for like a couple of minutes because I want them both to read things. It's gonna be really quick. So if you want to hear them do a read, you are welcome to stay. If not, because there's a lot of people here, the store is open, it's beautiful. Definitely go check that out. So we have two things. One is a dramatic piece. I am a nerd, so I do have Shakespearean Star Wars. So I'm gonna have both of you guys read. So we're gonna go reverse. So Bridget, you're gonna read it first.
Shakespearean Star Wars?
That's right. So Bridget's gonna read it first
Oh my
as
God.
our poet, and then Atticus will read it as like the actor. But then I also have some Pablo Neruda, and so Atticus will read that first, and then Bridget will read that as the poet, and then we'll be out.
He's pulling out some big guns here.
All right. So you're gonna read Luke Skywalker. Just that portion.
Me? Luke Skywalker?
Yeah.
Have I told you lately that I don't know what I'm doing? That's how the emails go. Okay.
Let me type it
So
out.
this is zero prep. They've never seen anything that they're being given. This is just how good they are. No pressure.
Yeah, okay.
Wait.
The time is now. The place is here. The man, myself, the matter, rescue of my friends. Be focused. Mind, be settled, heart and soul. I enter unto Jabba's place for one purpose, and that purpose by itself, my friends, is to find and bring deliverance. Now to it, Luke, and earn the Jedi name, not by thy might, but by thy calm and wit.
Come on.
How dare you? I want to pass the mic too. I'm like,
All right, Atticus, you're gonna read the same piece.
I'm reading the same
Yeah,
piece.
you're gonna read the same piece.
Same piece. Okay.
The time is now. The place is here. The man, myself, the matter. Rescue my friends. Be focused, mind, be settled, heart and soul. I enter onto Jabba's palace for one purpose, and that purpose by itself, my friends to find and bring deliverance. Now to take, now to it, Luke, and earn the Jedi name, not by thy might, but by thy calm and wit.
Oh, yeah.
how dare you?
Oh my goodness, so good, right? Both of you guys. Okay, so now we're bringing some poetry. It's balanced. Okay, so I won't make you guys read the whole thing. This is Pablo, so we'll do I Remember You As You Were. So just the first two stanzas.
First two stanzas as an actor, not a poet.
Well, just so it's your best read. That's what I'm.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah, we're mixing here. So this is poetry. So however you find your way into the words is what we want.
Okay, let's see. All right, first the title. I remember you as you were. I remember you as you were in the last autumn. You're the gray beret and the still heart. In your eyes, the flames of the twilight fought on, and the leaves fell in the water of your soul. Clasping my arms like a climbing plant, the leaves garnered your voice. That was slow and at peace. Bonfire of awe in which my thirst was burning, sweet blue hyacinth twisted over my soul.
Woo!
Woo! Okay, I gotta
Just the
stand
first
up.
two
I'm doing
stanzas.
poetry, so I gotta stand up.
Go for it.
I
Give it
should
to us.
I should have stood up.
The vintage Bridget experience.
I remember you as you were. I remember you as you were in the last autumn. You were the gray beret and the still heart. In your eyes, the flames of the twilight fought on, and the leaves fell to the water of your soul. Clasping my arms like a climbing plant, the leaves garnered your voice, and that was slow and at peace. Bonfire of awe in which my thirst was burning. Sweet blue hyacinth twisted over my soul. You want to hear me read my own poetry? 3:30.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Over
And your book's also in the bookstore, right?
Yes, in the
Yes, it is.
bookstore. Yes.
Yes.
So I just want to reiterate, they had never read either of those pieces before. This is the first time. That's how good that no rehearsal, that's just how good they are. So I invite you to check out the Triumphant series. Talk Story to Me anywhere you get your podcast. And on the plug note, again, thank you all for staying for the read. Where can we find you guys? What are you selling? Hashtags, ads, whatever. Whatever you do things.
Okay, I do a lot of things. Okay, so first, you can find my book, Be Trouble, outside at the bookseller, but also anywhere you buy books online or in person. Also at a romance bookstore called The Ripped Bodies. No, it is not romance. Somehow I've stuck my way into that bookstore. But speaking of romance, you can find me on Instagram. I do a romance review series called We Be Reading Wednesdays, which is totally opposite from what I do for anything else. Thank you. And so that's Bridget Bianca everywhere, including bridgetbianca.com for all things. So yeah, thank you all for coming out and thank you for coming to this. And I'll see you maybe later, 3:30 with the Overy office. It's a good show. You want to come out and catch that.
Awesome. Atticus?
Yep, I don't sell the thing. I don't sell anything.
You sell Tostitos.
I sell Tostitos, but not officially. Just to this crowd. So if there are any, please check them out, especially if they're Mexican stuff. No, you can find me on Instagram. My acting handle is the actual _ Atticus Batcan, or my voiceover handle is Real Voice Bender. By the way, Voice Bender came from this gentleman right over here. He complimented me on something that I did, and he said, "Man, you just do some crazy audio voice bending or audio bending." I went, "Can I use that? Can I use that?" If you use it, please tell me, because I want to use it. I want to just kind of twist it around and just say voice bending instead. He goes, "Please, if you want to use it, please use it." And I went, "Okay, I'll use it." So from that point on, I'm known by being Atticus the Voice Bender, but talking as voiceover. So bend it like Atmore.
Yeah, I'm coming thunder now.
We just hand out catchphrases over here.
There we go.
Yeah, and I'm Josh. You can follow the official production is at High Form Family. I probably should talk about that. So the whole company name is High Form Family, and it's that, again, the whole idea, there's enough for everyone, and everyone who is a part of this family.
Yeah.
And then, the podcast, literally wherever you get podcasts, Talk Story to Me. And yeah, thank you all so much for coming out. You guys are magnificent.
Thank you, live stream.
Yeah. Shout out to the live stream.